Welcome back. In this video we are going to check out JSON, and JSON is a library that allows us to work with JSON objects. So a Java serialization, deserialization library to convert Java objects into JSON and back. Perfect. JSON is a Java library that can be used to convert Java objects into their JSON representation. And it can also be used to do the other way around. So that's exactly what we need. And you can see in order to use it, we need to add the dependency here in Gradle. And yeah, let's just do that. So let's go over to our project and then go to the build Gradle, down to the dependencies here. And let's just add this. I'm gonna put that in here, code JSON or JSON. So sync now. This will download everything that we will need for JSON. And Gradle needs to rebuild, of course. Once that is done, I will go ahead and make my life easier by, first of all, putting some effort in. So I'm going to create a new class here, which will be called response data. So this will be a data class, and this data class, it should have several values, and in this case it will be variables, of course. So val message will be of type string. Then what else do we have in our JSON file? Let's look it up. We can see we have the user ID, the name, the email, the mobile. Then we have another JSON object, which will be the profile details, which is also its own class, so to speak. And then we have the data list object or data list detail object. So this is another different type of class. So let me just paste that in and explain what's going on. So what I did here is I just created a response data class, which contains the different key names. Okay, so we have the key name message, key name user ID, name, email, mobile, profile details, and data list. Of course, we want to store values behind those keys, but we make our life easier by using a model, which is this response data. It's a model of our response data, and we can then use it very easily when downloading the data from the website that we're using. So whatever website it is, in our case it's this mockup site, but let's say it's a weather site or it's a football results site or whatever, then we could also just prepare the model like that. But you can see something that is a little more complicated, and that is this val profile details. So we have profile details, which is another class. And then we have data list, which is actually a list of data list details, which is this class here, which has an ID and a value. Okay, so it's basically the same thing that we have here when we look at our JSON representation. Okay, so here we have the message, the user ID, email, profile details. That's where it becomes interesting, is an own class. So it's another JSON class here, or JSON object. And then we have the data list, which is a list of data list details. So these are data list details, so to speak. Okay, so it has an ID and it has a value. All right, so you can see that here we use the list keyword. So this is the, let's say, more complicated part, but I wanted to have that in there so that you really understand this part of it as well. It's really important to also see how you can handle lists from JSON files. All right, and now how does that even change our future work? Well, let's look at our main activity, and all the way down we had all of this effort that we needed to put in. So for example, when we wanted to get the message, well, we used this opt string, and then we got the message, and then we could log it. But then the beauty is it can be done a lot easier when using JSON. So let me show you real quick. I'm going to create a new JSON variable, which I'm going to call response data, and that will be JSON dot from JSON. And then we need to put in, well, import JSON as well, first of all. So JSON here, import that. Then we need to put, well, as you can see, there are multiple different options. So JSON element, JSON reader, string. So we have a string, right? Our result is a string. So let's pass that in there. Let's pass the result, which is our JSON file, so to speak. And then we need to map that with the data class that we prepared. So here, I'm just gonna map that with response data, which is a class. And here I use .java. Okay, so what I'm saying is use the response data as the model for the result that we have here. And it's going to map that. So it's going to map the different variable names that we have here with the variable names of our JSON data that we get here. And now we can go ahead and use it. So now, instead of creating this message variable and getting it from the JSON object opt string, we can just go ahead and say log.I is going to be message, which will be our response data dot message. Okay, and like that I can go ahead and do that with all the other variables as well. So I can now access the user ID with this approach, the name, the email, the mobile number, everything. And when it comes to the profile details, and that is where it's a little more interesting, there I can just go ahead and say profile or response data profile details dot is profile completed. So here we access the profile details, and in the profile details we access the variable is profile completed. So that's how easy it is done in JSON. That's really amazing. And the same goes for the rating. So here profile details are rating. And now if we want to access elements from a data list, then we have to use the following approach. So you can see here we use data list dot indices. So for item in response data dot data list indices, and then we get the value, which is the response data list item, and then we get the ID of it and the value. Okay, so similar to what we have done before with this for loop here, but now we are using JSON, which makes our life a lot easier. So we don't need to create objects all the time, but we just have one response data object, which we then can use in order to get the data very quickly and access it very easily. All right, and now let me comment this whole part out here up to the point where we had the for loop here, and run it as well, or run it again just to see if it's gonna work just the same. All right, so the Gradle is done building. Now let's look for here, not the JSON, but for example the message. And you can see we get the message here. You have successfully logged in. And then if we look for the user, you can see the user ID is there. Let's say we want to name, the name is there and everything. Okay, so now of course you can also just look at everything. So show only selected application, and then you will find that it will pretty much give you all the data. A little overhead is in there as well, but it's still pretty good stuff. So you can see mobile, rating, value, data list details, and so forth. So you can see it's a lot easier or quicker to use JSON, and you also have the data model directly here as well, which is pretty clean. And that is the improved and best practice approach, so to speak. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this part. We are going to use that quite a bit, of course, in the future. It's going to be important to understand all of that, but if you didn't get it completely, no worries. We're going to have some more examples for this. So see you in the next video.